Aloha y'all, Daniel Aaron here, your guide to vibrant living. This true story ain't what you think. The ending is not what, well, I don't know what you'll think. I'll tell you, when I heard this, my good friend Grant, acting teacher, told me this true story from when he was a lawyer a little while back. He was a public defender, federal public defender. He had one of those cases, you've heard about them, you've seen them, really just tragic, kind of pulls your heart apart. You know, it's like lose, lose, lose all the way through. So what happened is, this is in Arizona, Navajo reservation, a young man, I think he was 20 years old, Navajo guy, completely drunk, wasted, driving his pickup truck, coincided with a young couple just on their way home from their honeymoon. They'd gotten married, they're driving home, so happy, everything is wonderful. Pickup truck drifts across the line, head-on collision. Right, and what happens? The new bride instantly killed. Miraculously, both the husband and the drunk driver lived. Right? And by the way, I know that some of what I'm talking about might sound cliche, might sound stereotypical, even racist, and please leave that aside, because I'm just telling you the actual facts of this story, not making up generalizations. True story. So, my friend Grant is defending this guy. Not much to defend. The guy admitted that he had done it and was inside himself mortified about what he'd done. He saw that his life, which was heading in an okay direction, was rapidly going way downhill. So they'd agreed he's not going to try and fight it or argue against it. He did it. He was going to admit it. So they were going to have a, pardon me, I'm not a legal professional here, like a plea bargain, something like that. He was going to get charged with something a little bit less, manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, something like that. And so they did have to go before the judge to talk about this, and and Grant is seeing what he can do for his client to get rehabilitation, to get him treated, to get his sentencing reduced a bit, but maybe it wasn't going to be life in prison, but it was probably going to be 15, 30 years, something like that. And and not to say that that's necessarily wrong, because you think about the other side of the equation here. The young couple, their life, the woman's life is done. The man's life, can you just imagine what that would be like for him? So fast forward, it's about 2 weeks before the actual trial, and of course the way legal things has gone on for over a year now, year and a half I think at this point, and Grant, calling up his client, can't reach him for like weeks. He can't reach the guy, and they're finally getting closer, like a week away from the actual hearing, and Grant's leaving a message like, hey, we got to talk. I'm about to defend you here, and we need to get clear on what you're going to say and how you're going to present yourself. And finally, 2 days before the actual hearing, they get through, and the guy's like, oh man, I'm sorry, I've just been really distracted. I've been out working on the memorial. And Grant's like, hold on, what memorial? What do you mean? He's like, well, I've been building a memorial. And Grant's, well, what does that mean? He's like, you mean like you've built a monument or some physical thing? And he's like, yeah. He's like, okay, what do you mean? What for? He's like, well, to honor that woman and honor her spirit. He's like, oh, okay, well, where? Right on the site of the accident. And so they talk about it a little bit more. Next day, Grant calls up a investigator, says, hey, go down there right away, take as many photos as you can, get it back to me as soon as possible. So it turns out the guy had built a beautiful big monument ornately built with mosaic and precious stones built into it, a sign with her name on it, and really honoring from his tradition the spirit of this woman. And so Grant gets all this end of the day. Next day they go into court, and he's got all these photos, and he presents them to the opposing counsel and to the judge. Sorry, this is all really last minute. I just learned about this. They accept all the evidence, and the first thing that happens in that kind of case is they say they want to hear from the defendant. Oh, sorry, not the defendant. The what do you call it? The sorry, my legal. The one who had been injured. In this case, the husband of the woman who was killed. And so he gets to speak first, and first thing he says is, look, Your Honor, I don't really want any harm to come to this man. And the guy has seen all the photos at this point. Turns out he'd actually been to the actual memorial, to that physical monument. And this is, a year and a half later now after the accident. And obviously he had done a lot of healing. And so he said, look, Your Honor, this man being injured or going to prison for years, it's not gonna do me any good. It's not gonna do him any good. It's not gonna do the country, the court system, the jail. It's not gonna do anybody any good. I think, what would really do good is that he can get some treatment for the alcoholism, some mental health treatment, because by now the guy was seriously depressed. And that's I don't you have to do what you do, Your Honor, but that's just what I would like. That would be my request. Which, that's pretty rare, right? And kind of astounding, because so many people in his position would just be out for blood. And, no judgment. Understandably, they'd be angry, upset, wanting to get revenge, so to speak. So the husband says all of that, and then he finishes. He's addressing the judge at that point, and then he just kind of turns and he looks and sees the defendant, this now 21-year-old Navajo man who's standing there, and at this point he's just crying, so touched by what this man who he so grievously injured said. And he's at this point tears streaming down his eyes. The husband also tears streaming down his eyes. And picture this, in this kind of courtroom, right, there's the defendant and the judge and the lawyers, and this is all the assembled people. There's also federal marshals, right? Big guys with guns and uniforms there, because what happens is once the sentencing is done, they immediately handcuff the defendant and they take him away. That's, end of story. They get locked up. So all these federal marshals are there, and the next thing that happens is the husband looks at the young Navajo man and just starts walking toward him, and at this point both of these men have tears coming down their face, and the marshals are like on alert, like, hey, they're not supposed to interact, but somehow they don't do anything. The judge also by this point is starting to have tears coming down his eyes. The two men walk toward each other and embrace, and you can hear from me just in telling it, I'm touched by it, and in the end he had a very reduced sentence and was ordered to a certain amount of therapy and rehabilitation. What I love about that story is it speaks to the power that we all have for changing course, the power we have for the heart to speak, the power we have for forgiveness and how much that changes the world. I hope what I shared was entertaining, perhaps touched you a little bit as much as it's touched me, and inspires you to have more love in your heart, and perhaps even consider letting go of something, forgiving somebody in your life. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Aloha.